Hi, welcome to our post-show talkback after this afternoon's performance of Dog Sees God by Bert V. Royal, presented by SUNY Oswego Theater. My name is Mel DeVisser, and I'll be your host this afternoon. I worked as one of the dramaturgs on this production. For those of you who know what that is, dramaturgs offer insight and research into the historical context behind the show. This afternoon will be a short conversation to give insight into the world of the play. And if you have specific questions, add them to the chat and we will try to answer them for you. Joining me this afternoon are three student artists whose work you have enjoyed this afternoon. Can I ask you guys to introduce yourselves?
I'm Evan Piccolo, and I played Matt in Dog Sees God.
My name's Ethan Marzin, and I was the sound designer.
My name's Shai Sims. I was the art director. I played Marcy.
Awesome, guys. Thank you for being here with us today. Right off the bat, I've got an awesome question for you. What was your initial reactions when you first read this play?
Absolute tearjerker for me. I had read it a couple times before being able to participate in this, and it always got my eyes watery with the ending.
When I read it, I was very confused for the first about 15 pages, and then it all clicked, and I was not prepared at all for the storyline that I was reading. No one said anything about this show. They're just like, "Here's Dog Sees God." So it was a great show to read, and it connects on many levels, but I was not prepared for it.
I'm a bad actor. I don't read the script beforehand. I wait until the first reading, only because the information doesn't stay in my head when I read it by myself. I have to hear other people reading it. And I was not prepared for that read through that day when Evan's character had to pop off on everybody. So that was my initial reaction.
Awesome. Thank you. Those are awesome answers. Yes, it is absolutely a tearjerker, and you kind of have to be prepared. You can't go in it blind. We do have a designer in the room, Ethan. Where would you say you got your inspiration from?
Because of the show being virtual, I wanted to make sure that I could still sort of help throw emphasis on the show. So my inspiration mainly stemmed by helping portray the emotions of the characters. So CB has a lot of rage, but then also there's a lot of romantic feelings. So he has a rain cloud following him with thunder versus there's some heartbeats when he's kind of feeling more romantic feelings. Marcy and Trisha are kind of just goofy and out there, so it's more of like that comedic suspense kind of music underneath them. And then like Beethoven, I just wanted to throw a lot of classical music because I think that's where he is in his happy place and he can sort of relax. But like at the end of the show, that's the tearjerker of the performance. And so I wanted to make sure that whatever happened, we ended the show with people crying essentially. That was my goal, was to make people sad. I think I don't know. That was my goal.
I think you definitely reached that. I think you definitely achieved that, at least from me. Here's our next awesome question. There was a ton of collaboration that happened in this show. Is there any specific people or specific collaboration that you guys had with another person, another set of technical side to things that really like helped you in the process?
I unfortunately got sick towards the end of the Dog Sees God process and had to leave some of the coloring art to the director's sister, Lisa. And it had a lot to be done than having a lot more unfinished. So big shout out to her. Thank you so much.
Awkward silence. It's all good. We can always move on to the next question. Shai, could you tell us about the cartoons, where those ideas came from, where the color palette came from?
Okay, so my worst weakness is color palettes. And so I tried really hard to try to get the coloring to the tone. I wanted a brighter color for the music room because I know usually high schools have like either all white or like it's grayish atmosphere. So I wanted it to be more bright because it's like that's the room where they first kiss and it's like romanticized a bit. But I didn't want to do like reds because that's so cliche. And then for like Nocturne, I knew it was taking place at night, and instead of going for just like the dark blue atmosphere, I wanted more purplish to show a bit more like fantasy, like oh my goodness, we're living our fantasy. Da, 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 da. So I'm glad someone had a question about the color palette. That's great because that means I did a good job.
Yes, you did an incredible job. I don't think that was ever a question. What does this play say to our current generation?
I think this play hits on a lot of topics that occur in high schools. And I know that like, at least sort of my perception is like with kids in high schools, they go through a lot of stress and drama, but because they're seen as young, they're sort of seen as the fact that stress doesn't touch you. Stress, like that's just not a thing that you deal with. So I think this brings to light the fact that this is the point in a person's life that is probably one of the hardest because they're developing and figuring out who they are. And that's such a big struggle. So I think it's very enlightening for students to say, hey, I also went through that. Like, I'm not alone, but also for parents and grandparents to be like, oh, is that what my child went through? Like, I think it could start a conversation with families and maybe talk about that and bring them closer.
I do notice that parents weren't really brought up in the show at all, if ever. I know Marcy does say like her parents just left her to go somewhere else, and it is a problem with our generation, specifically with parents not being there emotionally for their children. They're only there like financially and physically. Like I'm here for you, but emotionally I could care less. And so I think again what Ethan said about how having the parents and grandparents and being like this is what my kid goes through, it's a very good like wake up call to like I can't only just be there for a roof on top of your head, I need to be there to talk to you too.
I'd also say I think it's not just our generation. I feel like it's kind of a bit of a timeless tale. I think it's kind of about that unsaid struggles of youth that every generation actually has. Because written in 2004, but it still feels like it could be written today. It still feels very relevant. And it still feels like it could be issues from the past, kind of all generations of youth dealing with the same struggles and that same coming of age. So
I think tying on with that though is it's our generation that is most in tune with mental health and sort of what we're feeling on the inside. So I think this is the time where people are coming forward about it and talking about it. Like I agree with you, Evan, that it is most likely always been an issue. This is the time though where people are speaking out about it.
yeah, before it was always unsaid.
Right. It's all of those sort of stereotypes that like you can't talk about your feelings, men don't talk about their feelings, all of that jazz. So I think we're sort of starting to break through those stereotypes.
I totally agree. These are awesome answers. We do have a question from the chat. Not me asks, what are some challenges with taking entrance cues over virtual theater? How do you know when you're live?
I can kind of answer this because I was on the technical side of it.
Absolutely.
So originally entrances were going to be marked by sort of the fade on like a transition music. So like every transition had a background drawn by Shai. And And then once that faded out with the music, that was sort of their cue. Hey, you need to go. But during recording, we didn't play transition music because it was going to be much harder in the end to cut that music out and then to put it back in. So one of our lead stream tech guru, Matt, ended up giving the cast a preview of sort of what was happening in live time. So they just kind of had to look off in the distance and see when their camera came up so they knew when to start. That's from the tech side. I'm sure Shai and Evan have some lovely answers as well.
Yeah, from the acting side, it was literally just standing outside the view of the camera, looking at the computer, waiting to see in your little window of the preview screen to see when it changes to 2 windows. And that means if you're in a scene with 2 persons, they're both ready to come on and you're ready to come on. So just standing outside of the camera waiting.
Absolutely, it's great. Go right ahead, Shai.
I was just gonna say it was difficult, but yeah.
All in the world of virtual theater. We've got another question from the chat, same person. Do you feel you have become more aware of the various stereotypes after working on this play?
Yeah, I guess I would. And I think something this play also kind of demonstrates is that never mind, I can't think of good wording.
I will say that one of the stereotypes that kind of like threw out to me more was Beethoven like being called gay just because he plays piano. Or like that's an assumption, like he plays piano, he's a musician, he must be gay. I used to be in band when I was in middle school, and I remember everyone just being like, oh, the band kids are gay. And I was like, yeah, I am, but like just because I'm a band kid, you think I'm gay? So it was crazy to see that pop up again because I haven't heard like seen something like that since middle school.
Yeah, I will agree. I do think, I mean, personally, I also worked on the show outside of dramaturgy, and I think it definitely opened my eyes to, it just kind of felt like I was back in high school with some of it. It's all very scary. Here's a great question for all of you, crew, actor, all of the like. What were the biggest challenges in this process of getting this show to opening night?
Tech-wise, we struggled a lot with the green screen and the lighting. Just like with green screens are very annoying, and if you don't have the lighting perfect, something disappears, whether it's a hand or a shirt or an article of clothing. So it was a struggle working with that, especially because depending on how, like what key, so with keying, like there's different colors, there's RGB that you have to mess with. So like some of the yellow and some of the costumes kept getting keyed out so you could see right through them, quote. So that was something that we struggled up with almost until the very last night of recording.
Art is so different from theater, so it was a hard struggle to have to go to rehearsals and act for the hours on end and be staring at a screen and then go back to staring at a screen again to do art. Yeah, that was probably the most difficult, trying to incorporate art into theater, because like I'm sure it's probably been done before, but it's not as common, so it's not like there's a handbook for it. So that was very oof.
I guess for the acting side, getting used to that very strange space that digital theater puts you in, because you're not looking at anyone, not playing directly off of anyone like you would in person, and it's a smaller space. You got to stay within the view of the camera, so and just maintaining all that.
To add to that, a big problem with my acting too was that I would dissociate because if I'm not looking at a person long enough, I forget that I'm supposed to be talking to a person. Especially for the scenes where Marcy doesn't talk for a really long time, I'll sit there and be like, okay, look at each character as they're talking, and then I get confused because I'm like, I know I marked it, but there's nobody here, and then I just completely like get out of character for a moment. So those were very difficult to try to stay in character, like even if you're not talking, trying to pick the people you want to look at and everything.
Absolutely. Exploring this whole new world is going to be hard for everyone, especially for you guys actors, not having that person to really like play off of and talk to. And it's really, I see the disconnect. I'm here for you guys. Uh, how did you use research to get to know your characters and the world of the play better?
With the Dramaturgy Hub, of course, there was a lot that I could not relate to with Matt, so I had to do a lot of the readings. Yeah, stuff about internalized, not to yeah, well, toxic masculinity and internalized homophobia to get some of that, and also the kind of not so deep stuff like the effects of cocaine.
Um, of course, Dramaturgy Hub, 100%. Love it so much. It's a very nice website to look at. Guys should go check it out after this talkback. Not
Absolutely.
sponsored by Toby Malone, anyways. Um, so on top of the Dramaturgy Hub, I spent a lot of time watching like Peanuts cartoons just to like get a feel of everyone's characters as kids. So it's like I feel like I had a connection with them from childhood. So that like because everyone like changes when they grow up, obviously. But you still have the memories from when you were a kid. So like sometimes if I was talking to Trisha, I would remember something that Peppermint Patty and Marcy did from the cartoons and be like, oh, that's why we're friends, because we've been through so much. We have so much history.
Awesome. Always refer back to the Dramaturgy Hub. Always. Definitely go check it out. Amazing people worked on it. I recommend it. We have time for about one more question, maybe two. I have a question from me. Were you guys nervous to tackle these deep topics? I know with theater, some people think of theater as bubbly and very fun, musical, and um, how do you guys feel about touching on these very deep topics that are hard to talk about?
I wouldn't say it's that necessarily difficult because sometimes in theater you do get that topic. You just got to know that it's important to give these topics attention and care and
I would have to agree with that. It's it's probably due to like how long I've been doing theater, but it seems more and more as time goes on, theater is trying to tackle these harsh issues because theater is probably one of the best mediums to tackle these issues. I feel with film, it's either they go too far over and show too much, and then it's like traumatic for people, or they don't show enough. And then for like books, not a lot of people like to read. It doesn't reach enough people, but theater it has this nice like in between where people who like to read can read the script separately, or people who need to like see something to be entertained can watch it separately.
I agree with Shy, and I think that adding on to that, like theater in person also is way different than just watching something on your screen. So like obviously the show's kind of funky with that ground, but like generally when you're going to a performance and you see it live, that connects in such a different way. But also I think theater is meant to sort of break those boundaries and do the unspoken. I mean, musicals are fun, and the musicals that are just kind of not pointless, but like the fun kid ones, like they're fun, but I think dramas that have messages and meanings are so important because people really do connect to them.
All amazing answers. We have time for one more question. Um, this is a great question, actually. How were costumes created for virtual theater? Was there any special consideration that needed to be made? Um, I mean, that seems more like a question for me. I was a costume crew chief on this show. Yes, I know. I had 2 hats on for this show. Thank you, hold your applause. Costume costumes are very difficult. We had fittings, with gloves, masks, face shields. Um, it was very difficult to get. We could only have one person in at a time, couldn't have multiple people changing at the same time. It was very hard, but in terms of the creative process, it was all very similar to when you're in person. You read the script, you sit down, talk with the director, and see what colors really come to you. That was a great question, Nami, I swear. Um, final question, and then I'll let you guys go, okay? All right. What advice would you give to someone starting out with virtual theater?
Don't judge yourself so harshly, because theater is meant to be a spectacle. It's meant to be big. It's meant to be dramatic. You're supposed to reach that person all the way in the back. So you make those big facial expressions, and Zoom doesn't like that. So when you're watching yourself and you're making these big facial expressions, maybe it doesn't work for film, but you're not a film actor. You're going for theater. So even if it's like, I don't want to see that right now, just think about if you were like 300 seats back, that facial expression would barely hit you, and that would be perfect. So I think just try to keep your confidence up, because Zoom theater was really pegging me down, but then I realized this isn't real theater. It's great to have this though, so I can still practice and act, but like no one's gonna be this close to my face when I'm on stage.
I think technically wise, start small. Don't go crazy. Don't try and do every single aspect you can think of and incorporate as too much, because you're going to get in way over your head. I think starting small and then sort of building up each show until you get to a point that you're really happy and you can do it all.
I say find a way to maintain your energy level and keep your energy up, because it can be really easy to kind of fall into the trap of another Zoom call, another Zoom meeting. I'm sitting in front of the computer, but yeah, and with the isolation of it, because you don't get to be around your cast and crewmates, and so keep your energy up.
I will also add in one last thing. Directors and SMs, take care of your actors. Staring at computer screens and having super harsh white light in your face for 6 hours every night is really painful, and it's not good for you as a person. So just make sure you're checking in more and taking care of them. They need it.
A little piece of advice for me: just don't forget to have fun. Don't forget why we're here to do theater, what we're here to show the world. It's a new platform. Be excited about it, if anything. Um, that's all the time we have for this afternoon. Thanks so much for joining us at Dog Sees God by Burt Royal, presented by SUNY Oswego Theater. My name is Mallory DeVisser, and I want to thank our panelists for their hard work and insight this afternoon. Thank you so much.